everyone, how are you? Thank you so much for your great feedback on my last video. When I was talking about that creator before, I don't think that it was getting clear as to who I was talking about. So I don't really want to be that kind of bullying person that goes and shows another creator and talks against, but I just don't see that there's a way for me to show truly the problem that is out there with other people spreading such misinformation. So we'll do it again. All right. Twist my arm. Twist my arm. Okay. Let's see. Let's go over here. All right. Going here.
Hello, in this video
wait,
I'm going to look at when Camille Vass...
Lady, wait. Hold, please. Hold. I saw... I don't know if I want to go in your playlists. Because she's... Okay, so this chick over here in Live Abuse Free, I thought that she was a therapist, and I looked a little further, and it says she's a coach. And that she coaches people who have experienced narcissistic abuse or either have or are currently experiencing narcissistic abuse. And as I pointed out in the last video that I did with her, she has it backwards. She has the complete backwards definition when she's using examples to define a narcissist using the Chris Watts-Rusick scenario. And she's got 131 subscribers. And so these 131 subscribers went around to all of these other places and then copied what she was saying. And it's been a real mess. So I've got to see what we can do here.
Hello.
She's got,
in this video, I'm going to look at Chris Watts'
Hold on, ma'am. Hold on, please. Please, hold on. Hold, please. Let's see here. Yeah, you guys can see who else I watch. I watch Tragic Wise. She's hilarious. I watch Heels in the Air. She's hilarious. I love those clip channels. Okay, so I want to do this under the Copyright Disclaimer Act of 107 of the Copyright... when I say it again. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, and news reporting, scholarship, and research. So without further ado, let's do this. And okay, so she's got an accent. She almost sounds Australian, but I'm not sure. She looks a little surprised. I'd be surprised too if those words were coming out of my mouth. But anyway, here we go. She's talking about Pappa Ronnie. Pappa Ronnie, the super nice Chris Watts' father. Pappa Ronnie loved Chris so much that when Chris moved out, after they put him through NASCAR school and everything, he moved out and had his own job. Pappa Ronnie was so lonely he didn't have his buddy Chris around that Pappa Ronnie started a little problem with the white stuff. You know, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds kind of, yep. Pappa Ronnie and cocaine, if you could even imagine that. But Pappa Ronnie mumbles a lot too. So I don't even know how he went to a drug dealer and got this all done and everything. I don't know. But Pappa Ronnie, I just think he's just a very nice man. So she thinks that the Watts are narcissists. So we're going to go here. We're going to just kind of talk to this ma'am, and we'll put her on full screen for your viewing pleasure. Hi, ma'am. Okay, so let's just say that like I'm on the other couch and we're having therapy because you're a coach who coaches people who have experienced or aren't currently experiencing narcissistic abuse, but you have it all backwards. So let's see what you have to say about Pappa Ronnie. Okay, here we go.
Dad and what he's been saying.
What is he been saying?
Ronnie Watts seems to think his son is innocent of killing Bella and Cece again.
Okay, hold please, ma'am. Okay, Pappa Ronnie thinks that his son is innocent of killing Bella and Cece. I'm not sure of when you did this interview and whatnot, but that was Chris Watts's initial confession. At some point when Chris said, I don't want a trial, I don't want to talk about this, I want to go and act like a turtle and go and put my head in my shell, and I want everybody to leave me alone, then they went ahead and put all of the maximum charges that could be, and he said, okay. And then they came out to Wisconsin and talked to him, and he gave him a whole story about how he did it and everything. And yeah, he's this master killer who could have done all of that and covered it up in under 3 hours or less. But who knows what happened that night? I don't know what happened that night. But if Pappa Ronnie wants to believe the confession that was first, a lot of people do. I may or may not be of that mind of thinking too. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But bottom line, we don't know. So let's go here.
We're back to where we were in the police station.
Right.
Over 2 years ago.
Okay.
It seems that he and Cindy have gone backwards and forwards. So initially they believed what Chris said to Ronnie at the police station.
Okay.
That Shanann had killed the kids.
Right. Okay. So where do we have any proof that anything happened after that? The only thing that indicates something different is when he talked to the investigators that visited him at Dodge. The interview was not filmed. We have him in a still picture. We don't know if they were holding up flashcards where he was saying all of that stuff. We don't know how or why. But you cannot say that one confession is better than the other confession if both confessions are there. How can you choose between the two? What proof do you have of either of the two being true? Because they choose to believe one over the other does not make them narcissists.
And Chris had killed her because he was so upset and angry that she'd killed the kids. And then they seem to have gone back on believing that because according to this book that Cindy apparently wrote, All My Broken Pieces, it's never been published.
No.
But in that book, she does say, or the writer does say that Chris has lied to her. So I think at that stage they probably didn't believe it. But now, as we can hear from what Ronnie says, they're back to believing it again. They're back.
Okay. So the book that was never wrote, the book that was never out, that the author of the book that wrote something says what? That they went back and forth. And yeah, why wouldn't they? I mean, if I was the parent, I'd prefer the first confession. And they actually have firsthand knowledge. They know their son. They know their son's temperament, which was inexistent. Prior to this case, what if somebody would have ever said the word narcissist and Chris Watts in the same sentence? They'd laugh at you. Every single person who's ever met Chris Watts prior to that talks about him being the nicest person. Good son, good student, good brother, good boyfriend, good husband, good dad, good employee. Model prisoner. So she thinks he's this massive narcissist, and by proxy his parents are. And so I don't understand why she's against Ronnie Watts thinking this. So let's see here.
Back to believing that Chris Watts didn't murder the children.
Okay, hold on. Who? Someone called Kim interviewed Ronnie on 28th November. She runs a YouTube channel for Chris Watts fans. Okay. Someone called Kim interviewed Ronnie on 28th November. She runs a YouTube channel for Chris Watts fans. Okay. Well, what is her expertise? There's a lot of back and forth about this person, and what does that have to do with anything? Oh, it's getting bigger. Okay. Ronnie says Chris told him in North Carolina that he and Shanann had decided to divorce and sell the house to live separately. Yeah, that's well documented. It's not a mystery. And in fact, when Shanann was in North Carolina, everybody knew that she had left her husband and she was getting a divorce. That's why when was it WRAL came out to North Carolina and interviewed Shanann's mother's coworkers at the beauty shop, and they were saying, well, yeah, because Shanann and Chris are getting a divorce, and when he came in here, he was acting real creepy and weird. Well, so how did you know that they were getting a divorce when they were in North Carolina if that wasn't common knowledge? So why would this not be true? This is true. It's not a surprise. And in fact, Shanann contacted the realtor from North Carolina to tell her that they were selling the house. Now the separation and whatnot, we don't know what she told her, because then there was the where she was hanging on to hope that they could get back together and live in a smaller house and everything, when she found out that being a single mom with 3 children in North Carolina was not what she wanted to be. But this is true.
Chris's dad has read the discovery files, so he's read the text messages that Shanann sent.
Okay. Chris's dad has read the discovery? How do you know? How do you know that Chris's dad has read the discovery? Did he tell you that? You friends with him?
Her friend saying that she was trying to talk to Chris about it, expressing how surprised she was about how he was feeling about her and the baby. How she had been turned down for sex, the book she'd bought him to try to repair the relationship.
Oh Lord, woman. Oh no. No, woman. Do you hang upside down like a bat too? Is that why everything is upside down and reversed? If she is now referring to the discovery, saying that Pappa Ronnie saw the messages, and she's taking this out, saying that, oh my God, she's turning it into seeing the messages that Shanann said that, oh, she was so surprised and she was denied for sex and everything. Ma'am, did you happen to read any of the rage-filled text where Shanann told Chris that he is so stupid, and if he wants to be stupid and be stupid murderers like his parents and be so stupid that they would kill Cece, that he could just go live in North Carolina with his stupid parents, and his stupid parents can never ever see the kids again, and everything else? Did you see those texts too? Because Ronnie would have seen those too. Ronnie wasn't going, oh, Shanann, I didn't know that you didn't get porked the night you wanted to get porked. Why? Okay. Now, ma'am, Shanann Watts was also saying that she had not pooped for 3 weeks. She was so nauseated, so dizzy, that she couldn't stand up, couldn't eat, couldn't drink, and was in fact spotting. Should she be then begging for sex from her husband? And would her husband say, wow, you're spotting, you're dizzy, you haven't pooped in 3 weeks, you can't eat or drink, you're vomiting, you're spotting, this is your 3rd pregnancy, you're spotting, shouldn't you be going to the doctor, ma'am? I don't think that sex would be on the list of any woman in a supposed high-risk pregnancy. Well, spotting. Okay. Spotting is a medical emergency. And she should have went to the ER. Her trying to coax Christopher into having sex after she had told him about all of these health things and how horrible she felt, I don't think that would get anybody in the mood. I don't think that was the talk to get him randy, if you will, in your language.
So he had read all of this stuff, and yet he's talking about Chris's story that he and Shanann had already agreed to have a divorce,
Yeah,
as if it has merit.
it does have merit. Okay. Ronnie, okay. It does have merit because the stupid book, Christopher threw it in the garbage after Shanann went out to North Carolina and the plans did not work out as that she wanted them to work out. She knew that she had to go back to Colorado to settle things, but that house was moments, hours away from being foreclosed because the thing that Shanann Watts had not told Christopher Watts about was that she had not been making the house payments. There is information that he did know that they were behind 3 months. It was more than that. That's why he got the $10,000 out. She then used that $10,000 to fund a 6-week vacation. All of the air costs, the airplane. I went through this all, and 2 more mini vacations within that. If you can't make the house payment, and you've not told your husband. You've not told your husband that you can't make the house payment, which means you're not making the money that you were lying about, that you're taking his money when he gets paid and spending it on other things such as vacations with the other man that you spend a lot of time with out of town while Christopher Watts is back home. Why is this so hard to believe that there's not merit? Ronnie is asked why Chris wrote the letter at his house in North Carolina that day. Okay?
The letter they're referring to was the letter that...
Okay. Ooh, well, this is not helping your case, ma'am. So 8:16:18. To whom it may concern. If anyone gets this letter, I would never do anything to hurt myself or my children or my wife. If anything happens to me, please investigate my wife, Chris Watts, and signed by Ronnie Watts. Where did this come from? I've heard of this letter, but I've never seen it. Well, ma'am, you may have now turned into a hero in my mind because this was not in the discovery because I spent many, many hours of my life that I'll never get back reading that discovery. This one, this is a gem. This is like the Holy Grail. Holy moly. Wow. Okay, ma'am, you're looking better. And you know, and ma'am, I'm not saying you're not pretty. You're very pretty, but you're just confused. But this is a big one because this speaks to why did he write this? What was going on? What was she threatening? What was she telling him she was going to do? Because there's a whole list of other things if we want to go down that road. Well, thank you for this, ma'am. Thank you. I like
Chris
you now.
Watts wrote saying that if something happened to him and the children, it would be Shanann's fault. And Ronnie is saying that the reason Chris wrote this is because Shanann was acting crazy.
Well, the reason Chris wrote this was because Shanann was acting crazy. So why isn't there more credence to the first confession? And why is Ronnie Watts at fault for believing that first confession? Especially that letter. Oh my goodness. Ma'am, you got to see this for what this is. Come on, lady.
That's me sort of summarising. It's not the same word that he used, but that's pretty much what he's saying. And the reason she was acting crazy is because she apparently overreacted to Cindy. Ronnie is saying that Cindy never offered Cece nuts, and yet Shanann reacted as if she had. If Shanann was so upset that Cece was exposed to nuts, then how would that possibly explain why she wanted to kill Cece?
Okay, here's the problem, ma'am. This is a good question. Um, and I see what you're doing with this. So it's a good point. Okay. However, it was not about that. And that's where, okay, narcissism is a very confusing personality disorder. If you have not been a true victim of a narcissist, I am so happy for you. You are blessed beyond belief. A narcissist is a monster that is treatment resistant. They are charismatic. They don't stand out as the abuser. Many of us have narcissistic traits. Narcissism is a survival mechanism, okay? So the way that she's saying this is she's saying, why would Shanann hurt her children if in fact she threw such a fit when the mom put ice cream that had nuts in it, or however the story goes. I know that it's not proven that there was ice cream that there's nuts. Some people say it was pistachio ice cream. Some say it was vanilla that was made in a nut factory. Some people say there were a bowl of nuts. Shanann was saying that and here's the thing. Okay, so we're going here. Let me before I get on this. So her argument is Shanann would never hurt the children. Look at, she acted so what do you call that? Boisterous, so strongly when Cindy brought something with nuts around Cece. Okay, I understand that. So let's take that. The problem is that Shanann also said that there were razor blades laying around the house. Okay? Now that, my friend, is where we get the crazy. Shanann said that there were nuts all over and there were razor blades all over the house. She called her father and told him both of those things and to come and get her. Okay? Now, Daddy said, where are these razor blades? I'm going to go in and look. And she's like, oh, I don't know. There wasn't, look, because she knows that her father would have went in there, talked to the Watts and said, you have razor blades around my grandchildren? What kind of sick, weirdo Satanists are you? So she knew that wasn't going to fly. That is acting crazy. Okay, that is acting crazy where you're saying that there's razor blades, but there were not razor blades. Christopher witnessed that. The father witnessed that. She backed down from that. Okay, now that taken alone is one piece. The day before, there was Napgate. This was a power struggle. This was because Cindy dared to question Shanann, and Shanann was hurt. And Shanann is the narcissist. She had a narcissistic injury, which, as if you were to look at the whole case, I mean, maybe you have other things to do, and just because I'm a hopeless insomniac and I went down further than anybody should in the Watts case, you don't know all of the nuances and everything that happened. So if you just scratch the surface and you didn't know, sure, I see how you could see that. But there is so much more. It was a power over thing. And the thing is that it is crazy because there were no actual nuts. There was no actual threat. Christopher Watts, in fact, if you want to argue that, Christopher Watts killed the girls, well, they were at a birthday party the evening of the night that the unthinkable happened. And he asked the host for something different for the girls to have because they were not allowed to have the cake and ice cream because it may have nuts in it or made in a nut factory, whatever. So he simply asked the host for popsicles for them instead, which was fine. So if we were to go just on these two things, we would also say, well, if Christopher Watts was going to unalive them in a few hours anyway, why wouldn't he let them eat cake? Haha. See what I did there? I did a French thing. I did a European thing there because let them eat cake is what Marie Antoinette said, right? Why wouldn't he have just been, sitting back like, oh, good, let them have an anaphylactic reaction because then I was going to do this anyway. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't take that or this. Now, Shanann was acting crazy, and if you saw the whole texts and you saw the raging manifestos and you saw the things that her mom was saying to Chris in the discovery, as the father of Chris Watts, if he did read the discovery, it's going to speak a lot louder about what happened to his son than seeing Shanann as this little tiny, innocent, sweet wife where a bad word or a mean word never crossed her lips.
It's interesting to me that he says all of this in a very earnest way.
Really?
That he's saying something that's completely, the logic is laughable. It's just so wacky.
No.
And yet he thinks that this makes perfect sense.
It
that
does.
Someone might kill their children for those reasons.
No. You got it backwards, ma'am.
And this complete lack of any logic continues throughout the interview. Chris Watts said he should have just gone to the rookies game. So I took that to mean, because I think he said that again to the detectives when they came back to interview him when he was in prison.
Okay. He said that he should have just went to the Rockies game because that's where he got busted on the affair. Because that is the one time where he did use a Visa rather than the prepaid cards that he had. And the Visa charge was what Shanann saw while she was in Arizona and talked it over with all of her MLM friends. So her MLM friends were not paying attention as to how they were supposed to sell the new product or anything because it was all about the drama with Chris and Shanann. Okay. So, and that she had not pooped in 3 weeks and blah, 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 blah. And that, because it was all about her not feeling good. And if you have not pooped in 3 weeks, please seek medical advice. That's not normal. Especially if you're pregnant. That means it's something emptying somewhere or you've got to back up. Please have a bowel movement every day, would you? Anyway, I'm not seeing you make the point here with Ronnie Watts. I don't see that he's done anything bad here, especially with knowledge of this note. I've done a lot, and I've not seen that note. I've heard of it, but I could never find it. So I'm very, very thankful. I'm in your debt, ma'am. And maybe if you saw everything, you'd be able to understand and see it in this way too. Maybe not, that's fine. But the level of misinformation that you're spreading out there is contagious, and it's reached a fever pitch. And what you said about who went to court and everything, I need you to kind of see that you had it backwards, because people are out there are saying that the Watts are greedy, not knowing that the Rusicks are the ones that have a $6 million lawsuit against Christopher Watts. They continue to get money and money and money and built a beautiful outdoor kitchen. Is that going to bring their grandchildren back? No, it's not. Why do they continue to have all of these fundraisers and whatnot for themselves? The Watts haven't had any fundraisers. They're not building a brand new outdoor kitchen. They're not supporting their adult child so that none of them have to earn any money. No. This isn't saying anything about Pappa Ronnie being bad. In fact, Pappa Ronnie should have went and held that letter up from the rooftop. Pappa Ronnie, why didn't you show this? Or did you show this? Pappa Ronnie, I need to know more about this.
I understood that as meaning that that was the point of no return in his mind. When he used that credit card, when he went out with Nicole, that was, the decision was then made. He wasn't going to back out.
Yeah.
But Ronnie is using this as another reason as to why this is all Shanann's fault.
No.
Chris had initially said that Shanann hearing that he was going to leave her, that had been the trigger for her killing the children. If she knew that there was going to be a divorce already and they'd already agreed on it, then why would she have suddenly freaked out and killed the children?
Because, and you'll have to listen to some of my other videos, if you'll go back to my video called The Real Bored Housewife of Saratoga Trail, I babbled too much and the first part of it. I kept flailing and hitting a stop record, so it turned in 4 parts. But if you go ahead and you listen to parts 3 and 4 most specifically, you're going to get into how that happened. So I do have an answer for that. It also explains why her blood alcohol level would have been 3 times the legal amount the night that the unthinkable happened. She came in, she was done. She was done. A pregnant woman with 3 times the legal amount of alcohol in her body is not normal. She went in, she drank, she had a shit fit. And from what happened that night, we cannot prove at this point, but there are mitigating factors. And here in the United States, we do have due process, a trial by our peers. We have affirmative defenses and mitigating factors, all of those things. So it would be interesting if Christopher Watts ever fires up his balls, gets on his feet, stands up, and does a 35C, which he is more than eligible for, gets an attorney, and has a trial by jury where all of these things can be heard so that both sides can be heard, because both sides aren't. People looking for answers go to people like you, and you've had this platform, and unfortunately, you don't know the whole story, and you're confused on how a narcissist operates. Ronnie Watts is not a narcissist, has never been a narcissist, does not display any narcissistic traits, and thus that you've described so far does not show it.
When she already knew that this was going to happen and she was acting normally around the children. So how does Ronnie make sense of this if he is convinced that Shanann already knew they were getting a divorce and was already okay with this? They discussed it together and had agreed together to put the house on the market for that reason, so they could split up. Then how does he make sense of this being the trigger for Shanann to kill her children? So Ronnie has talked about...
Okay, so remember, Shanann called the realtor before she left North Carolina. She was begging Chris to stay with her, okay? That means she knew they were separating. They were not working together, that this was no longer working between them. She was begging him. She went to Arizona, saw that charge, and she knew she didn't have a chance. She knew that he had an affair, and it is very possible that she too had been having out of the marriage relationships. And in fact, the discovery shows that Christopher Watts took a paternity test to see if he was the father of the child she was carrying, Nico. Okay? The results of that paternity test are not in the discovery. The Rusicks talked about, they got ahead of it and said, oh, Chris was saying that that's not his baby and all of that, and he was doing that just to demean their daughter. And of course, and then they said, well, did the paternity show that he was the father? Oh, yes, of course. Okay, where do we have it? Where and when did Christopher Watts say that that was not his baby? I don't see where Christopher Watts questioned that baby that she was carrying not being his. This is how the Rusicks get ahead of the narrative and protect themselves for when the truth starts to come out, that there's already answers. When would Christopher have said, that baby is not mine? Was it that night? What happened that night? We don't know. Now, we have never seen a paternity test showing that the fetus that Shanann was carrying was in fact Christopher Watts. We see that there was the DNA taken and the paternity sent off. We do not see the corresponding information. The corresponding information would be given to the father of the child, because that is not in the Watts discovery, raises questions as to who was the father. Okay? Is the father the person who visits their grave every single day? Rumored to be, allegedly? Who lives in North Carolina? When she went to North Carolina, happy to be out there, then something happened. She got rejected again. Check it out. Ma'am, maybe when you know all of this, it'll make sense.
How he cried at the funeral and he cried at the baptism, and both of these would be very moving experiences, and it would make sense for him to cry. So that sounds normal. And he hadn't cried for many years before that, or maybe nothing quite so moving had happened in that time. So I don't know if he normally has issues with expressing emotions, as he said.
Well, we can see that because he went to substance abuse as opposed to expressing how much he missed his son, we can say that Ronnie has problems expressing his emotions. Ronnie mumbles. His speech is sometimes difficult to understand. That could cause frustration and confusion as well.
Suggests maybe he does, but at least we know that he does have these normal emotions, you know, because otherwise he wouldn't have cried at these events.
Yeah, he has normal emotions.
But he's making an assumption that his son is the same as him and that his son has these same emotions, but he just doesn't express them. But we've seen that this isn't the case.
How?
We've seen Chris Watts smirking and really, at some points, even grinning on the front porch.
Okay, so you are saying that Christopher Watts' behavior on the porch sums up everything for you. That what would anybody on the porch being interviewed by the media when he's admitted that he unalived his wife? We do not know what happened to the children. What would anybody be acting like on the porch? He should have never spoken. Had he never have spoken, he would be free as Casey Anthony, as OJ, as John Benet Ramsey's dad, brother, mother, may she rest in peace. Because he spoke, he's in prison. It has been long suggested that Christopher Watts is on the spectrum, that he, in fact, has some symptoms of autism. What he was then doing on the porch while he was rocking back and forth, hugging himself, that's because he was stimming. The look on his face, he's trying to understand how he should be. He doesn't know. What should he have done? There's no right answer because, fortunately, these things do not happen often. You cannot say that because of his emotions on the porch, you've summed him up as this massive narcissist that you claim that he is. That's one snapshot. There's a whole lot more. No, ma'am.
Just hours after he's murdered his family.
I miss telling him, hey, you got to eat that or you're not going to get your dessert, you know, and just like, you're not going to get your snack after. I miss that. Like,
it's not possible for him to be feeling normal emotions or emotions that we'd consider to be normal at that time. And then later in the police interviews, he's talking about his little girls, knowing that they're in the oil tanks. If his children have just been murdered and he looks at pictures of them, how is he not going to break down? Or
Because he is trying not to go to prison for the rest of his freaking life, and he is confused, and he should have not talked. What should he have said? Nothing is the right answer. When you are under investigation for something similar or anything and the police want to talk to you, do not do their job for you. Make them do their work. That is their job. Do not talk. The only words that come out of your mouth should be, I need an attorney. Attorney. And in fact, between him and his father, they mention the word attorney no less than 5 times. So what you are referring to and what he spoke of when seeing the girls' pictures and whatnot should never be considered, because he should have had an attorney who would have never allowed him to do the polygraph, which is inadmissible. Christopher Watts was suffering from long-term sleep deprivation because he was taking a substance that was put on him by his wife because he was malfunctioning, so she put 2 on. Sleep psychosis causes delusion, paranoia, etc., etc. Go back, listen to my other videos. I've explained this all, ma'am. But he was even more sleep deprived at that time. Appropriate emotions? Who knows what those are? We should not know what anything was because he said the word attorney. His father said the word attorney. He should have had an attorney. None of this should be discussed.
Or feel nauseous or have some kind of strong emotional reaction when he looks at the pictures and talks about them. And we can see that he's nervous, but that's about it. And of course he's nervous because he's worried for himself. But that's it. We don't see, we obviously don't see any tears.
How is he supposed to act? How do you know that he is not nauseous? How do you know that inside he is not feeling all of these things? Shanann absolutely lambasted this man in texts, verbally in front of her friends, in front of his parents, in front of her parents, taught the girls to do so as well. And what did he do? He never once reacted. Never once. When she would shame him, degrade him, and go and encourage another man right in front of him, he never once reacted. He did not show any jealousy. When he felt bad for the ways in which she was mistreating his little girls, he didn't stand up for them. When she locked them in their room at nights for 12 hours at a time and knew that the girls were hungry, he snuck sandwiches into them. When he saw that she was asleep, he used his key to the door, snuck them in snacks. He didn't tell her, don't do this. He didn't. He never stood up. When she self-admittedly bragged about beating his ass all the way out of the house and putting him out on the porch until he could behave again, did he stand up to her and say, hey, that's abuse and I deserve to be treated better? No. No, he didn't. So this man having a problem with emoting, yeah, looks like it could be hereditary. Looks like Pappa Ronnie holds his emotions in, and so does Chris. Okay, that's not proof of guilt.
We don't see any pain, but we do see an emotion. We see that he's nervous. So it's not even, in those 2 examples, it's not that he's not showing emotions, it's that the emotions he is showing are not the normal emotions. Maybe you could argue that this is what happens when someone dissociates, that they aren't really with it, so they don't show these emotions.
Okay, so we could say that he's disassociated from that. That's a fair assessment, and that's probably what he had to do to deal with his marriage. He had to disassociate from what was going on. He had to disassociate in order to keep the peace. And that is all that he's doing now. He won't stand up. He won't tell the truth. He won't do anything because he wants to keep the peace. This man is mortally afraid of confrontation, literally. We can see that he looks nervous. You can see his brows furrowed. You can see his eyebrows. You can see him looking down. I don't know what else would be appropriate for the emotions when you are trying to basically hold your shit together so that they don't arrest you. He was not doing anything that anybody in his position wouldn't do, I would think. Just a second. Just a second. Just a second. Just a second, please. Just a moment. Just a second. I gotta just answer this text really quickly. There we go. And just a moment, please. Let me do something here. Sorry to make you wait. I just got just a second. Just a second. Just a second, please. Just a second. Okay. Okay, so now back to the grind here. Let's see.
Because they're so traumatized by what's just happened. And that would make sense. But
Yeah,
then why is
disassociating
he
and
so
trauma.
nervous? That part doesn't make sense.
Okay, so she's saying that the disassociation could be that, but if he's nervous, that's not consistent. Disassociating from the event, but still being nervous would be consistent because of his overall difficulty with being around people. You saw Shanann always having the camera around, and you saw him walking away from it. When she was talking about how she was going to do all of this, he was crouched down low, interacting, playing games with the children. He did not get along with adults that were strangers to him, especially in a situation that is confrontational from what we can see.
Why is he showing lots and lots of nervousness in the police station, but no empathy, no remorse, and no sadness that they've gone? In a letter to...
Okay, no sadness? Wasn't he crying with his father? He was crying with his father. He was crying. That is why the Tamburglar was giving him the intensive, basically sexual massage. Because he was upset. He had been crying. I don't know what... ma'am, this all wrapped up in under 48 hours. Shanann was reported missing Monday morning. And the confession, if you will, was Wednesday night. So the emotions that you're seeing here, plus he's massively sleep deprived, which was a chronic thing, and then on top of that, and he was most likely in shock. So shock, disassociation, nerves, we don't know. The fact that after because we do know that he did something with the bodies. Okay, that's not, he confessed to doing something with the bodies. Okay, but how the girls were unalived is the question. Okay, now he admits to, after he had disposed of the bodies, he went and he hatched a big turd. So that's a visceral reaction. He did have a stomach ache then. So if we're looking at where we see any kind of emotion, you see that his stomach could not hold in the contents anymore. And the CBI, in fact, did find that. They found that. So I don't think that it was customary of him to do that, but that's showing that he wasn't okay. If we want proof, I don't know that they bagged it up, but he did have a stomach ache.
Sherilyn Cadle, he talked about how he felt when he dropped.
Don't you talk about Sherilyn Cadle. Don't, good God. I don't know if I should go take the other half of my blood pressure pill, because we're not going to talk about Sherilyn Cradle crap, okay? That sorry excuse of a human was plagiarizing. She wrote what she wanted to write because she plagiarized. Her book was pulled. So why are we referring to this book? If you know about the interview at Dodge, then you know about Sherilyn Cradle's piece of, now we're talking about craps in the middle of the... Don't get me started on Sherilyn Cradle, okay? She did not listen to what he told her. She wrote down what she wanted to. She exploited Christopher Watts' parents. What they tried to tell her to put in the book, she didn't. She wouldn't. What Christopher Watts said that he wanted her to put in, she wouldn't. She didn't. She plagiarized. It was a terrible, terrible book. No, we cannot. No, nope, no, no, no.
CC into the oil tank. He said, "I couldn't believe how easy it was to just let her drop through the hole and let her go. I heard the splash as she hit the oil."
Okay, that's disgusting.
So he sounds very detached and very cold.
Yeah, that is cold detached.
He also said in the same letter that he had buried them, or rather dropped them into these oil tanks in case they woke up, to make sure that if they did wake up, they would die. So they would, in other words, be alive in the oil and then die in the oil. So again, this shows a complete lack of empathy.
Okay. Where are we pulling this out of? Okay. I respect my audience more than to get into the nitty-gritty of that conversation.
And a lack of any real relationship with either of them.
That's not true.
Because otherwise, how could he be that detached?
That speaks to
and
the
how
defense.
could it be easy to drop their bodies into the oil?
That's not what he was saying.
So when Ronnie suggests that Chris Watts has all of these normal emotions that everyone has, but he just can't show them, then obviously this doesn't make any sense. And this is what the Chris Watts fans think as well. You know, they're all convinced that he was so bullied and abused by evil Shanann.
He was.
That he just couldn't express himself anymore.
He was.
And but actually he felt the same as everyone else feels. But all the evidence points to the opposite of that.
What
and
does?
Even his own words do.
What do?
He's asked why the detectives went to see Chris in prison and interview him there.
Yeah,
and
why?
He says he doesn't know. And the detectives said to Chris it was because he was such an unusual case.
Yeah.
Everyone had thought he was so nice, and this was
Yep.
just so out of the ordinary that they
Right.
wondered if he would answer some questions.
Because
and I
we have no
had the
proof he did it.
impression they were doing all of this to make him feel special
No.
and unique.
No.
That they had been, that's what they'd been told to do.
No.
That, that someone like Chris would get off on that. He needed to be made to feel special because he's a narcissist.
No, he's not.
And so, and I wonder why.
Okay, ma'am, you have it backwards. We talked about this in the last time. This woman just got done saying that Chris did not have a relationship with his little girls. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to refer to the other thing. Christopher Watts did all of the hands-on care. Shanann Watts had those acrylic nails that prohibited her from being able to do much of the hands-on care, if you will. I think that we'd be hard-pressed to find any mother of soon-to-be 3 kids that was able to have the same acrylic nails that they'd had for a decade prior. Still on. It's, you gotta let your nails go when you got a newborn, or else you're gonna claw them. So Christopher Watts did the hands-on. Shanann does brag and say that from the day that she brought home, that she was doing the baby wise, the way that she was twisting baby wise from day one, from the moment that Cece was born. And that's what she said, is that she doesn't cuddle, she doesn't snuggle, she puts the girls in bed and walks out. They're trained, they're sleep trained. That's somebody who doesn't have a relationship with their children. Okay? Christopher Watts was not allowed to interfere with that because that was the way that she put down the rules. She allowed Christopher Watts to, when he woke up in the morning, get up, take a shower, go downstairs, fill the bottles of milk and juice for the girls, unlock the girls' door, give them the juice and the milk so it was there. So when they walked in, then they could watch Shanann get ready, put her makeup on, etc., and watch TV until and if it was time to get driven to daycare. Okay, we're talking about daycare days. So then she'd drive them to daycare. They'd be in daycare all day. They had to still have their naps at daycare, and she insisted that they sent pictures of the girls sleeping because she was not going to not have the nap routine messed with. She would either pick up the girls or Christopher would after work. They would eat dinner, and the girls would be bathed by Christopher. He then would have to do their rectal thermometers as per her. Then she would write down the temperature because she said that the doctors were suspecting Mediterranean familial fever. So she needed to write it down. He took the temperatures. That's why she had the Vaseline. And the one time that Cece got into the Vaseline, then warranted the bathrooms being locked between them, the Jack and Jill bathrooms, because Cece was thirsty, because the fluid was also restricted in them so they would not pee the bed too much. From the 12 hours they were locked into their room, the Jack and Jill bathroom was locked between them and the water was taken out of the toilet. Shanann would read a story to Bella. Christopher would read a story to Cece. And then that's it. Lights out. Their noise machines were then put up to the highest possible volume, which is pictured. She stated this, these are all her words. She did not want them to hear her out there. Okay? And then they were in their beds, locked from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. There are the occasional where you see the sevens in there and stuff, and that's because they were so unusual that they were something that she made a film about. Okay. Now, Christopher then would wash the girls' clothes, and he was instructed not to put them in the dryer. He needed to air dry them. He could then pack their backpacks for school the next day, get their lunches ready, etc., etc. And Shanann would do her things, whatever her routine. Her routine was very, very important to her. Now, on non-daycare days, then she would lock them in the rooms from 12 noon to 3 in the afternoon. So on non-daycare days, they were in fact locked behind closed doors for 15 out of 24 hours a day. In the nighttime routine, they were also given medication that was not suggested by a doctor. No doctor would, especially with Cece's age. They were given Tylenol and Benadryl every single night. Please refer to the other videos I've done on this ad nauseum. So we have things where Shanann is filming Christopher doing the diapering routine with Cece. And they have the child gate where Bella's on the other side. They don't want Bella to ever get at Cece, as she says it. And so you see Christopher Watts is the only one doing hands-on care with the girls. When he would mow the lawn, he had to have one child strapped on it. One time they had one in front and one in the back. And when he was doing the dishes, he had one of the girls strapped to the back. Like I say, he'd be the one on the floor playing with them, but they weren't allowed to have toys out of their rooms. It was just so sad. I can't. But the fun and the hands-on care was done by him. She created the rules and the routines that were not to be messed with under any circumstances.
They did interview him. Was it some kind of, to sort of protect themselves in case he ended up doing what he's now apparently doing and saying that it was all very unfair and he shouldn't have, that he was sort of, that the police weren't fair to him.
What?
That he was pressurised into doing the lie detector test and into pleading guilty and so on. So now Ronnie's...
Whoa. When and where is Christopher Watts saying that he was pressurized into taking the lie detector? Where is he saying that he was victimized by the police? He says in his interview that they couldn't have done anything different and that they were very, very fair and kind to him. I've not heard where he is saying that.
Saying that these incredibly disturbing details that Chris gave during this interview were just said because he wanted them to go away.
Yeah, he
did. So he was going to say something so that then they'd go away and leave him alone.
Okay, now, she sees it to that point because she's saying that essentially he was going to say anything and give horrible details because he wanted them to go away. That is what I have said all along, is that Wisconsin thing, the Wisconsin interview, was total malarkey. He had long enough to think about whatever could have happened, worst case scenario, and created that story. At the very end of it, he told the story about how when he was in school, he told his teacher that he went to China or Japan, over summer break, and had the teacher convinced, and the teacher mentioned something to the mom, and then they found out it wasn't true. And he said he could tell a story and make anybody believe anything. That was his little nod to whatever he just told them to go and run off and tell the masses so they'd leave him alone. He said the most heinous and unthinkable things that go through his mind because if we talk about his ability to disassociate, he may have disassociated that night. Sleep psychosis is a huge consideration here. We also do not know what was in the formula, in the stickers, in the transdermals that he was taking double of. They made his body show that he was exercising 24/7. His watch proves that. So it was obviously a stimulant. Well, methamphetamine is a stimulant too. People on meth do weird things. We don't know what was in those stickers and what psychoactive properties they may have had. A lot of people have came to me and told me through my channel that they had tried that product at that time and couldn't keep it on. It made them feel and think in ways that they never had. If it is true that Christopher Watts did not have an affair previously, then you could put that in there too, that the substance that he was wearing, which caused him to act differently than he ever had, and the sleep psychosis, it fits. It fits for what was going on with him in the last 3 to 6 months of his freedom.
But why did he have to say anything? He didn't, did he? I mean, he was in...
The reason why he said something is because he's a people pleaser. He does not know how to confront somebody and say, I do not want to speak to you. In fact, they played on that. The Tamburglar played to his masculine side and did the flirty giggles. They didn't come to him saying, hey, we want to speak with you. They did the laughing, the chumming, bringing him chocolate milk and asking him about this and talking about a guy who had, killed this and that. And oh yeah, they're talking to him like he's a fellow law enforcement officer. He's a people pleaser. That's why he talked to them. To do anything different would not be in his vernacular, and that is the problem here.
Prison already for life. He didn't have to give that interview. He could have just said, I don't have anything to say, or I don't want to talk to you, goodbye.
He said that because he wanted people to leave him alone. He wanted to fill in the blanks in ways that, like his creative stories, he can make anybody believe anything. He made you believe that, man.
And that would have been it. They couldn't have forced him to answer any questions. And if he was the kind of person who just wasn't capable of saying no, then he could have just said, I killed them in their beds, I killed Shanann in her bed, and then I buried them all. Why would he go into detail about the 2 children being with their dead mother for nearly an hour, and then describe in detail how he killed one in front of the other next to the oil tanks, that he picked one of them up with the other one still alive.
Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stick my fingers in my ears. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to talk about this.
With Bella still down there in the car.
No.
I mean, all of this was so disturbing. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it doesn't.
And yet, Ronnie is coming across as if what he's saying is a perfectly good reason as to why Chris told this very long, detailed story.
What? Huh?
So what?
She doesn't even know what she just said. Ronnie believes the first one. And as you put up the Holy Grail, that, like I said, I had not actually seen, I'd only heard of, he believes. And the thing is that people go down all of these things and they say, oh, she was a professional hit. Oh, yeah, this is a psyops. This is the other coworkers were in. This is all. No, it's very simple what happened. And it's very simple and straightforward. It doesn't take all of this conspiracy. But the reason why there are all of these conspiracy theories and more questions than answers is because he didn't have the courage to stand up at a trial, and there were forces making sure that he did not get the strength to go to a trial. They withheld all of his letters. They withheld all of the information from him. While he was in Wisconsin, he said the words, I didn't know that I would never get out. I didn't know that they were going to put me in prison forever. Well, does that tell you that they explained what he was doing by forfeiting his right to a trial? It doesn't sound like it, does it? There was no investigation. There is no proof. There is no proof of anything that happened that night. They don't have a case, and they know it. The discovery shows nothing. Had he never have talked, like I say, he'd be free as Casey Anthony. He'd be free as OJ. He talked, and people are going with the stories. If Pappa Ronnie wants to go with the first story based on that Holy Grail letter too, look at how Christopher Watts said, if anything happens to me or my children, Don't believe I did it. It was her. And he dated that 8'6", 18? Come on. 2 weeks before, everybody knew that something was going to go on. Everybody knew that something was going to boil over. Shanann had her best friend, Nicole, going and getting the mail because Shanann could not let Christopher Watts see the mail, because then he would have been aware of how she was taking his hard-earned money to fund herself going on vacations that she didn't honestly qualify for. She was cheating. She was buying her ranks. That's why there's over $25,000 worth of Thrive in that basement that you see on the cam, on the body cam of the officer. That should have been house payments. That should have been HOA payments. What else had she not made the payments on? Had she made the payments on the auto insurance? We don't know. How is it that she has that Lexus, but it was leased in Christopher's name? That doesn't sound like that's something that was earned.
Is going on. Does Ronnie actually believe anything he's saying? Does he not have the ability to think logically at all compared to, other people? Is he just lacking in that ability?
Okay, how can anybody see anything as logical in this case? It is the unthinkable. So to say that, because Ronnie Watts can't imagine his son doing the second scenario, that means that Ronnie Watts doesn't have the ability to think? So what, it's just a wonder that he, remembers to breathe? And that to this point in life, how has he gotten there? He's gotten there because he's an adult male who's competent, who has built a life, has a steady relationship with his wife of how many years? They're stable. They live in the same house, same marriage, have 2 children. I'm not seeing what you're going there with Pappa Ronnie not being a man who's able to think. I think that anybody who had the situation put in front of them that they did would not be able to think. But if we're comparing it to the Roos, which you say are the victims in this, and that they're so docile, and you think the Watts ran to the bank and everything, the Roos are very logical because they keep getting more and more money and making more and more fundraisers, and right away they asked for $30,000, and right away they did the $6 million. And because the Roos are able to keep getting money and building things, then they can think right, because they're all about image. What is a narcissist all about? Image, greed, the way that things look. I don't see that you've done your part in analyzing Pappa Ronnie as this big narcissist that you claim that he is.
He really can't think logically at all, and he can't understand how any of this sounds, how ludicrous any of it sounds, then that could be possible, that he isn't an intelligent person.
That's not nice. That is not nice to say that Pappa Ronnie is not intelligent, okay? There are all kinds of people in this world. And to then say that Pappa Ronnie is unable to think logically and may suffer from low intelligence, all because he He had his son there. His son wrote that letter that you showed. Pappa Ronnie has embroidered clothing that says Pappa Ronnie on it. He is clean shaven. He got on an airplane and came right out to be by his son's side. The Ruse didn't do anything except for call the police department and tell them ridiculous things and threaten getting the CBI and FBI on when the officers had already done it. What's to suggest that Pappa Ronnie is of substandard intelligence? His global effective functioning would probably be pretty high based on his one marriage, one home, the ability that he overcame his substance abuse problem, that he raised a son and daughter that were responsible adults up and until whatever happened in this thing. I don't see why you think Pappa Ronnie's not intelligent.
Have to have a very low IQ
He does
to not be able to understand any of this logic.
What?
I think that this is about
She's saying that he would have to have a very low IQ to not make... Woman...
something else. It's not that he isn't capable of understanding logic. It's that he has a very deep need not to acknowledge this logic. He has a need either to believe what Chris is saying or to pretend to believe it. And I get the impression this isn't consistent, that sometimes he actually does believe Chris, that his need is so strong he'll believe him, and at other times he's more concerned about making sure other people believe this story.
Okay, Pappa Ronnie is not the one running around doing interviews. Pappa Ronnie is not the one going and putting out old videos on the internet daily. Pappa Ronnie is not the one going and getting trolls to keep up the narrative so that the money train keeps going. And Pappa Ronnie is doing his best to deal with the unthinkable. There is not a definition of how to accept what happened. There is no instruction book out there for how anybody should cope with the unthinkable.
And that actually the truth is less important. I'm thinking about the police interview when Chris has first told his dad this version of events where Shanann murdered the children, and looks at the camera while he's comforting his son. That's pretty much the first thing he does.
And oh, gee, they don't know how to express emotion? Looks like emotion to me there. And they were both crying.
So it seems to me that he's thinking about what can be heard in that room. And, so what's going to...
Yeah, because Pappa Ronnie, the one that you're saying has such a low IQ and can't function, is the one saying we need an attorney. And yeah, he's looking around because you know what? He's smart enough to think that, they need an attorney. And what his son was trying to whisper to him, he knows was probably just heard or seen because he's the one able to think right then on his feet, as his son wasn't, because his son is in a state of shock. Now, it was really interesting how at that moment the Tamburglar swooped in with great speed, and her black and white sweater gained movement, and it was just something else. They were listening, and he was thinking it. So if he had such a low IQ, ma'am, how would he be able to be thinking on his feet like, okay, what is being heard? Who's listening to what? Who's seeing what? Who just heard that? And we need an attorney.
Be heard from him when he responds to Chris. I'm also thinking about when Cindy had said to him, I don't care what you did. And she had tried to encourage him to speak to a lawyer, even though it was clear she didn't know what he'd done. And Ronnie had...
Here we are again. When you talked about how narcissistic it is that the Watts still loved their son. And I spoke to you, ma'am, about unconditional love. A parent, a mother, a father, and I do not mean by biologically birthing a child. It is where you have formed a relationship and you have unconditional love for another, and you are put in the role of the parent. You have unconditional love for that child, and there's nothing and nobody that can stop that. Especially based on the Holy Grail you showed. She's thinking in the back of her mind, what did Shanann do? And Cindy had been victimized by Shanann on Napgate. Please listen to previous videos where I've explained that. Napgate, Nutgate, and she wasn't even invited to the wedding because nobody showed up for Shanann's bridesmaids thing, so she blamed it on Cindy and the daughter. All of the gaslighting that Shanann did, gaslighting, that's what narcissists do. Cindy told her son to get an attorney to fight, to stand on his feet and fight. He has nothing to lose. Why won't he stand and fight? That is absolutely and 1000% what a mother would tell her son in this position or any other where she believes that he has a right to his own voice.
Had been right there with her. He'd been saying they don't have any evidence. He'd read the discovery files, and he could see that they only had a theory. They didn't have definite proof he'd done it.
Yeah.
So again, his priority was not the truth. It wasn't about whether he had done it. It was about how there might be a possibility that he might be able to get out of prison if he got a lawyer. And this is the part of this latest interview that
Oh my God, woman. I'm going to have to see if you really actually said that.
The truth, it wasn't about whether he had done it. It was about how there might be a possibility that he might be able to get out of prison if he got a lawyer. And this is the part of this latest interview that I think is the most telling.
Okay? Ronnie said, okay, I don't think I went back. I don't think I can handle what she said. She was saying that Christopher Watts was saying they have no proof. I can't. Oh, my head hurts. What? Good Lord. This woman. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. Christopher Watts was not the one saying they don't have any proof, because then why wouldn't he stand up and fight?
I don't think you'd say that you still love your son no matter what, if what meant killing his wife because she had just killed the children.
Yeah, it actually is. Are you fucking kidding me, woman? You don't think that a mother would say to her son, I love you no matter what, even if the what was the unthinkable? Why don't you talk to the parents of the Columbine? Why don't you talk to ma'am, have you never watched any Sopranos, SVUs? When the boys escape from prison, they go to mama's because mama's going to hide them, and you're going to have to get through mama to get them. A true loving mother has unconditional love for her child. Nothing and nobody can break that, no matter what. Yes, that's true.
Because I think although in the eyes of the law that would be wrong and someone would go to prison for it maybe, depending on the exact circumstances, other people might actually accept that. They might think, well, murdering your children must have been so utterly, what an utterly horrific thing for you to witness. So of course you wanted this person dead. So why would that mean you'd love your son no matter what? It would make sense that you'd still love your son then. So I think he's giving himself away here. I think this is showing his doubts about what has really happened. So if he has doubts and doesn't always fully believe Chris's story, why does he have a need to act like he does? I'm going to look at this further in the next video. People have asked me...
Pappa Ronnie and Cindy love their son unconditionally. They have from the moment he was born until then. That's what parents do. I am frightened that this woman has clientele.
Me how the little elephant's doing, so I thought I'd give you an update. He's actually doing a
No,
lot
Jesus,
better
no,
now.
that I don't want to know what you're doing with that. I've had enough of you, ma'am. All right, so this is analyzing Ronnie Watts' interview part 1. I'm gonna go, maybe have a bath now or something. I've got to go and not think for a little while. Okay, thank you for listening. If you have not yet, please like and subscribe. And if you go back to my older videos, it'll all make sense. It all falls into place. You'll see how this is going here. I have other videos on other subjects too, but this one, there's just so many more questions than there are answers that I end up trapped looking at this. We will do part 2 of analyzing Ronnie Watts' interview. Part 2. We'll do that tomorrow when I can unscrew my head. Now let's talk about this. This has 100,000 views as of 2 years ago, and she has 131,000 subscribers. I'm a very small channel. I don't have much hope getting the truth out, but if all of you who are out there, we're up to 921 strong of a community that is so wonderful. You guys talk to each other in the comments so wonderfully. You're so kind to me. I'm so grateful for you. You have proven that we are a group that can look past the black and white. We can talk about the gray, and within talking about the gray, we can see that this case is quite possibly one of the worst miscarriages of justice. And if what happened to Christopher Watts happened and is out there and not questioned, how many other people are in prison that should not be? That was our biggest fear in making laws, is that one person would be wrongfully imprisoned. That's a scary thought. And we have a big problem here when we can see all of these problems. The answer is always in prevention and identification. If there's nothing else that we can do, we can learn about what we saw in the behavior that was always recorded. And in honor of Bella and Cece, we can do better when we see things that are not adding up. We can advocate, we can get involved, and we can try to make a better world for all children, especially in honor of those two, and Nico as well. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you all soon.